What's your lemonade stand story?
And he was like, YouTube's going to be the next big thing, Devin. Like, you need to get on that. You need to get on it early. And I'm like,
And all of us, we all go through our own trials, our own level of stuff.
Sure hope this works out. Otherwise, this will be a huge waste of time.
I mean, what else is it all about other than just taking risks and continuing to try and grow and hopefully get better and better at making things?
Most of the billion-dollar brands you've seen were started by people that were just solving a problem for themselves.
We're telling lemonade stand stories from some of the world's top creators, makers, and go-getters.
We're rolling right now.
Hey,
We're having fun. We're rolling.
Yeah.
Hey guys, this podcast today is sponsored by Yalla, a task management and team collaboration software that we use at Lemonade Stand. We use Yalla to keep all of our team members organized, wherever they are. In fact, we used it to plan and organize this podcast. Visit yalla.team, that's YALLA.team, and try it for free. We also have a special offer for all listeners of this podcast. Use promo code LEMONADE and get a lifetime 25% off if you upgrade. What's going on, guys? This is Charan Prabhakar with the Lemonade Stand Stories podcast. I'm here on location in a very, very special place with a very, very special man. This is Jared Stewart, and we're here at TribeHouse, which I just very recently heard about, and I'm very honored to be here. Here's an interesting thing. Jared and I, even though he doesn't remember me at all.
That's not true.
Okay, well, he may remember me. We met. Gosh, it must have been 2002 or 2003.
Yeah.
Actually, it was when we first met, because we had a mutual friend, Don Osmond, who introduced me to a company, like a connection type of networking sort of thing called Corporate Alliance. I don't even know how to describe it, so you need to
That was perfect.
That was perfect, right? It was just so eloquent and perfect. But no, Jared was there, and you founded it, I believe.
Yep.
Is that right?
Started the company in 2000.
2000. Oh my gosh, that's great. And that's when we first met. And then 20 years later, another Osmond, David Osmond, reconnects us, and
They're everywhere.
You can never get rid of them. But it's also cool because we realized you went to Timpview High School, right? Yeah,
Yep.
I'm also a fellow Timpview graduate, and we also made the connection that your younger brother, Mahan Rai, is a really good friend of mine. He was a year after me in high school,
Yep.
and he's your youngest brother,
Yeah,
right?
he's my youngest brother.
Okay.
There's 11 in the family though, so it's
Holy cow.
There's a lot. So
11, and where do you fall?
I'm fifth.
You're fifth?
Uh-huh.
Oh my gosh, that's so great. That's this is great news because your family made up for the fact that I have no kids. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for doing that for us. No, it's so great. I'm so glad you're on the podcast, man. But thanks for
It's a pleasure. I'm glad
thanks
to
for
be
being here. Yeah. So the Lemonade Stand Stories podcast is all about people's lemonade stand stories. You know, when they first got into business, sometimes they got engaged in like, you know, creating like a lemonade stand and like doing business like that as a child. But one of the things I know about you is you're a big proponent of networking. You know, you've got such great relationships with a lot of different people. Was this always in your blood? Were you always interested in doing this type of thing, or how did this all kind of begin?
I mean, obviously, always loved people, and I thought that was a huge part of life. But initially, I had started actually in wireless. I worked for Sprint right out of school, and then I realized that I'm an entrepreneur, and so within a year...
Is that when you decided you were an entrepreneur when you were doing Sprint?
Yeah, because I realized I was never going to be happy working inside of a structure, and so I started I don't know if you remember Nextel phones, but they came out and it turned into Sprint Nextel. But anyway, Nextel came, they had their kind of like the walkie-talkie thing going on, and I heard about it, and then I opened the first one of the first Nextel dealerships.
Wow.
We were the top in the state. But that's where I realized that I got my entrepreneurial chops. I learned probably the biggest lesson I learned, because Nextel was paying about $250 per handset. Because I didn't work for Nextel, I was a dealer, right? An authorized dealer. And then I woke up one morning, we'd built this whole structure around this compensation package with employees and a good chunk of staff, and I woke up and they sent me an email that said that they had changed the pricing structure, my commission structure, from $250 a handset to $75 a handset.
Oh my gosh, that must have been not fun for you to hear.
We were out of business.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
Just like that.
Oh yeah, it was over. So because you can't, I mean, if you build it, and so that was my commitment that day. I said it was one of the first entrepreneurial lessons I learned, that I was never going to build on somebody else's platform again. And people do it all the time, and I get
Sure.
that they build on Facebook or LinkedIn or all these other things. A good friend of mine too, Paul Allen, built a company on Facebook that he grew into this huge thing, and they were out of business a day later because I think Facebook changed like their algorithm or something.
Isn't that
and he built this
crazy?
beautiful business, and like overnight it was over. And
Oh my gosh.
I'm like, how do you? So anyway, that's one of the lessons, entrepreneurial lessons I've learned, is that at least for me, I'm going to try to, as much as possible, try to build infrastructure that is controlled by the organization and that can't be, somebody can't flip that light on or flip that light off.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing because my career as an actor is based off of people wanting to hire me, right?
Yeah.
And so I remember I was on this one show, and they were like, "Oh my gosh, we love your character. You did so great, yada, yada, yada." And then the next season, they never called me back. And it wasn't anyone's fault. It was just the storyline just went a different way.
Yeah.
But when you don't have the control, or when you don't have that that ability, then it's like you're consistently relying on something else or someone else.
Yeah.
And
I don't like that feeling.
yeah, it's not a good feeling.
I mean,
Dude.
I love loving people and relying on
Of
them.
course.
But I don't like having them have the power to say yes, you're successful, or no, you're going to fail. Right? That's too much power. And I think as an entrepreneur, you've got to go into it saying, look, I've got to, whatever that thing is you're mapping out.
Yeah.
Like, this is the area that we're going to be the best in class on.
Yeah.
And we're not going to benchmark on other people's success. We're not gonna try to figure out what they're doing and try to copy it. We're gonna be like, hey, we're building our own unique thing. It's unique to us. It's our own. It's not necessarily even in the TribeHouse world. It's not even like a better mousetrap.
Yeah.
It's a completely different way to catch mice. Like, hey, this is a different idea. It's a different thought, and sure, it has components of what's existed in the past.
Yeah.
But that's kind of where I try to focus.
Well, no, I love that. I mean, it's cool because, your whole ability to like network and kind of get people to believe in your vision and stuff, I think kind of like lends itself to something like that, right? Where you want to create your own infrastructure and create like a culture around that people feel safe and feel like, hey, this is where I belong and this is good.
For sure. Well, and I really didn't answer your earlier point. Like, did I fall in love with networking? Actually, as I was working in my companies early on, I started to realize that all my opportunities were coming from relationships. I started to read everything I possibly could on networking and building relationships, and I realized there's nothing. Like, the great advice at the time was like, hey, go join the chamber, or go get on charity boards, or figure out ways to get into opportunities where you can mix and mingle and start to build relationships. But I'm like, that's not a system.
Yeah.
Right? That's not predictable.
Yeah.
And it's intentionally transactional, which I didn't like either, because I don't like viewing people as human ATM machines. I'm like, look, I want to interact with you as a human being. I want you to, and as a salesperson, typically, because every entrepreneur is a salesperson, and the question is, how much do you believe in what you're selling?
Yeah.
And so I think it's super important that, but I started to realize, like, hey, I had to feed my family, I had to figure things out. So I started viewing every interaction as me trying to get a withdrawal from somebody, right? I needed them to buy this product or service. And I'm like, it took the humanity out of the whole experience. And so that's why people hate to be a salesperson, and that's why they hate salespeople.
Yeah.
Is because I think it offends us in some way. Like, subconsciously, we're like, hey, I'm feeling like you're not seeing me, right?
Yeah.
So our whole thing is like, hey, life is about relationships. Business is about relationships. Why don't we just focus on building the trust and the relationship and worry about the transaction and business opportunities later? And
I like that.
We call it learn, serve, grow, but it's one of the fundamental principles that we outline in the book, Tribalery, which is like, hey, if you want to build a relationship, learn about who they are, find a way to serve them, and naturally they're going to reciprocate over time. Yeah. And then you don't have to really worry about like yourself. You can worry about them, they'll worry about you. Right? And
I love that.
Yeah, if you got 200, 300 people worrying about you and taking care of your business and you're focused on them, it's amazing how all the ships the tide rises for everybody.
You know, there's this analogy I've heard that in hell there is this big banquet, this huge feast. Have you heard of this analogy?
I haven't.
Okay, well,
I'm super excited.
You're gonna be so pumped. You're gonna be so pumped. No, there's like this huge feast, big banquet, and instead of arms, people have like these long, like big spoons attached to them, right? And it's complete hell though, because of how long the spoons are. They can get the food, but they can never get in their mouths. They can't bend it, so it's always out of their reach, and they'll never be able to get to it. And it becomes hell because they can see it, they can't get it. In heaven, same banquet, same spoons, except people are feeding each other.
Yeah.
You know, and I like that analogy, and I think I didn't come up with an analogy, but I really like it because it's kind of like what you're saying, right? Where let's worry about each other. Like I'll worry about you, you worry about me, and by doing so, from a genuine perspective, you can like lift each other up and like help each other grow.
Sure.
Which I think is like the best form of any sort of transaction. You know.
Yeah.
It's interesting because when I got back. So I served an LDS mission, and I got home in 2002. And at the time, a lot of my friends were getting involved in different network marketing businesses. And I've never even heard of that, honestly. I didn't even know what that was until they started like introducing me to that. And at first I was like, yeah, like this is awesome. This could be interesting and cool. But I started noticing very quickly, like if I wasn't expressing too much interest, they like didn't talk to him anymore. I'm like, wait, what? What happened? How? What? I don't know. I don't understand, you know?
Yep.
And I always thought that was a very interesting thing. And the thing is like, but network marketing, if it's done properly, like, because I have seen successful network marketers, they're the ones that are building real relationships. The product is coming second. So even if someone's not interested in the product, they're still interested in being your friend.
Yeah.
You know, and like caring for you. And then if the person signs up, great. But if it doesn't matter. You're still your friend.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly right. Yep. I think that's where we get lost, because the truth is, there's no getting away from the idea of relationships. In the book, we talk about every opportunity has its root in a relationship. Everything. Yeah. And we can get. And we actually beat up this principle for about a month, just making sure it was true. Yeah. Because we're like, okay, so my sister and I wrote the book together, and we just literally went back and forth trying to figure out if there was any path to an opportunity that didn't start with some type of relationship, and it's impossible. So I'd be happy to do that at some point if you want to test the theory. But that being the case, and even like Forbes, like they say the number one predictor of career success is being part of an open network. Oh, wow. So a closed network is...
Yeah, explain the difference.
I'm going to church and meeting the same people, going home meeting the same people, go to work and the same people at the water cooler, right? So I'm in this kind of incestuous loop of people, and there's an open network is what we're building here, which is, hey, I met George and Sally and Frank yesterday, but Susie, Judy, and Greg, I met the next day. They're not doing exactly the same thing I'm doing. We're meeting those relations. And so every time, because on average, people know about 250 people. Yeah. And none of our people are average. A lot of them know thousands of people. So you build one relationship, you build trust with that one person, then they start opening their networks up to you, right? Yeah. So it's one to many, one to thousands in some cases. Sure. So if they trust you, but again, they have to trust you. You gotta trust you. If they don't trust you and there's not a real relationship there, it's always going to be transactional. Yeah. Right? So, but if you can get to the relational component of this, that's where true success is. And frankly, it's just so much more fun. Totally. Yeah. Nobody wants to be a salesperson that's cold calling and knocking on doors. It's nobody's dream. Yeah. But building relationships and then having a cool product or service that you represent and seeing if those people that you have relationships with are interested in helping you be successful, that's cool. That's super cool. Yeah, because then you're having fun with the people as well. Yeah. You know what I mean? You're having a good time. I think the same thing, like in the film world, you want to work with your friends, you know? Yeah. And when you're making movies with your friends, you end up having a way better time than with complete strangers, because you just, you're kind of going through this little war together, right? I saw a LinkedIn poll the other day that had they asked how many close associations, close friends that you could call in a time of need, right? And it was like 25% had 0.
Are you kidding me?
No.
Wow.
And then the other was like 1. And
Really?
then there was like 3, some that had 3 or 4 that was like 15, 20% on the high side. But that was it.
Wow.
Which is pretty amazing that we go through life being so disconnected from each other that we don't feel, in a quarter of the cases that no one they can call. And to me that's just terrible.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? Because then you realize, oh my gosh, what are we doing with our lives if we're not building friendships and if we're not building these relationships? Why are we even like here doing what we're doing? And sometimes I feel like we get a little too distracted. And tell me if this is the case, if you've seen this before, but like I've seen some entrepreneurs that get a little too lost in their business to focus on like the importance of it, which was like building relationships to begin with,
Yeah.
Do you see that ever?
I see it really close. I see it every time I look in the mirror. So yeah.
Oh, really? You feel that way about yourself?
That was me. And so that's why the reason I could write the book about this topic is because we call them gladiators, governors versus gladiators, or tribe leaders. But a gladiator sees the world through the lens of victory, right? You're going to go, and we celebrate them.
Sure.
If anybody that gets in the Coliseum and just goes in there and battles and beats and kills, if you're the victor, it's about winning, right? And winning is fine, but like I'm into team sports. I want to do stuff as a group and get connected and feel like we're working toward a common goal.
Yeah.
And I think most time it's like, hey, I'm gonna overcome all the odds. And some of it's just kind of the American hero stuff, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I think we miss. Again, we did the research on Disney. We did the research on all these major leaders that people think were self-made. None of them were.
Yeah.
Actually, they were in almost every case. They were great, what we call tribe leaders. They had these massive amounts of Disney, especially.
Yeah.
I mean, people don't know that there's I think it's iWorks is his name. So Disney had a distributor that came and basically stole all of his employees that he'd been working with, and basically underhandedly was putting him out of business. And Disney was like a 50-year overnight success, right? It took him forever to actually get anywhere. But all of his animators left because Disney wasn't a first-rate animator. He wasn't. People don't realize he was average at best.
Yeah.
But iWorks, which is an interesting name, but actually stayed with him, and they got back on the train and we're going back, and Disney's just depressed, obviously, and he's like, I have an idea for a character, because their old character was called Oswald, the rabbit, I think. But anyway, his idea was for Mickey. Okay. And then drew him into existence on that trip. So that's where that little group, that relationship between those two people, those two men on that train at that time in a really difficult situation was basically the founding of Mickey Mouse and everything we know as Disney now.
Wow. I had no idea, man.
And well, nobody knows who that guy even is. It's like all the credit goes to Disney. I'm like, the truth is that's not real. Yeah. Like, it's fine. But the reality is had as much to do with
the creation of
Mickey as Walt did.
Yeah.
But nobody knows his name. So, and it doesn't really matter. I don't know that we need to know everybody's names. I think we just need to recognize that the principle exists. Yeah. This is how things happen. Yeah. And that we don't do things in test tubes and in isolation. Some people, I just think we need to start celebrating the combined effort of people rather than like, hey, I'm the king of the world.
I'm the king of the world. Do you know who Tom Shadyak is? Does that name ring a bell?
I don't.
So Tom Shadyak is a director, and he directed movies like Ace Ventura. If you remember that, Liar Liar. Like big
bunch of Jim Carrey stuff.
Bunch of Jim Carrey stuff, right?
Awesome.
Yeah. He's a very very successful guy, and he knows comedy and all that stuff. So his story is very, very interesting because he directed these movies. He became extremely successful. He had this beautiful home. I think it was in Pasadena or something like that. He had like people wait on him. Like, it was just insane. And he said he's never been more miserable in his entire life. And he was like, what in the world is happening? Like, here I am. I have all these things, and all this stuff, and yet I'm so depressed. And he was taking a bike ride one day, and he got in a pretty bad accident that put him in the hospital. And while he was in the hospital, he like really reflected on his life, and he's like, if this isn't bringing me joy, like if all the stuff, I mean, of course, yeah, it was like, it brought him like moments of like recognition and excitement, but not true joy. He's like, what is joy? What is happiness? And so he went on this kind of a little journey, and like made a documentary called I Am. And it was like self-funded. It was him and just like a couple people. And the whole idea was to search for joy. And he was saying, in America, we have a very competitive mentality, and it's taught to us from a very young age. It's like you have to get the best in school. Yeah, these are the best grades you can get. You have to be the best in this. You got to be the best in that. And it's all about competition. And sometimes capitalism leads to that. It's like survival of the fittest, right? And so we have this mentality ingrained in us. But then he started realizing a lot of the other parts of the world that he would go and visit, where they hardly had anything but were incredibly happy, they believed in cooperation. And it was all about like putting things together. And so he loved that idea. And so he basically was like, yeah, I'm getting rid of all of this stuff. Like this stuff isn't serving me. So he got rid of all this stuff. He bought like a nice little trailer and he started to teach at a university, at a local university in California, for free. And the money he would get, he would just donate it back to the school, because he was like, I don't need any more money. I've got all the money.
He was fine.
He was fine, and so he's like, I'm just donating back to the school, and he would buy bicycles, I think, for all of his students, and say, go out there and just go ride and like just go experience life.
That's
and
cool.
Anyway, it was like a really cool story, and from a very talented guy that like discovered, okay, what is true happiness and what is true joy? And the problem is I think like a lot of times people, entrepreneurs and such, that are so into the creative space and making so much money, forget about the component of having joy with the people you're working with.
Yeah.
And
especially because if you work as much as I do, which is
a lot,
way more than I should probably, and you're not, there's not some, because again, the data supports this. I'm not a huge data guy as much, but it just does. Like I said, according to Forbes, the number one predictor of career success is your network, the people you know.
Yeah.
Like, and I don't even like using the word network. Actually, it's your relationships.
Yeah.
Your friends, and if you look at it's the longest running study in history. I think it started with JFK's graduating class in college, and then it's still going today. It's a Harvard study that they just kept, because they were just trying to figure out we're going to study these people forever and see what it shows us. Why are people living longer? What are the variables that make, is it health? Is it heart disease? Is it how they eat? Is it the smoking? Is it what are all these things? And I don't think the data that they got was the data they expected. In fact, I'm pretty sure they didn't, because what do you think the number one predictor of health is?
Probably relationships.
It's friendship.
Friendships, yeah.
Yeah, friendship is number one. So basically, if you have a close circle of friends, it's like not smoking a pack of cigarettes a day. So, and people don't really recognize that, but and we're talking health benefits too, not just like, societal benefits, all the other stuff as well, but we don't, for whatever reason, I think the cultures and things you're talking about that are really highly connected, they live longer and they're happier.
Yeah.
Because we're designed to be together.
Yeah.
We're not designed to be apart.
Yeah.
And the world, especially with tech right now, it's putting us in silos. We're getting less and less connected.
Yes.
We're getting less and less happy.
Yeah.
And we're getting more and more
weird.
numb.
It's weird because it's like the technology is supposed to connect us more, and yet it's not.
It's not.
And
I don't know if it's by design or whatever it is. It is what it is.
It is what it is. Do you feel that, I don't know, like, we were talking about like different technologies, like kind of pulling us apart. Do you ever sometimes feel like a lot of the relationships that people have with each other are very surface level?
Yeah, in fact, that was the primary driver for building the organization in the first place, is that because I had a problem. I'm actually introverted, So,
Are you?
Yeah. So I got an introvert building a relationship company, right? So it's just like,
Fantastic.
hey, hold on, don't you just hate relationships in general? I'm like, no, I actually love relationships. I just need them to be meaningful.
Yeah,
I need
I
them
like
to go
that.
deep. I need to talk about real stuff. If we're not, then like literally death to me is a mix and mingle, or just some kind of like icebreaker at the beginning where people are just milling around with a drink and just trying to like feel comfortable.
Yeah.
Like, you might as well just shoot me in the head. I don't like it.
Yeah.
And so, but I looked at that and I'm like, oh, there's an opportunity, because wherever there's a problem, there's an opportunity to solve the problem.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, the problem obviously is that this is all surface crap.
Yeah.
None of these people like it. I think even extroverted people might like a certain amount of that, but eventually they still want some depth.
Oh yeah.
And
yeah.
they want to feel like these people are their actual friends. So what we did is like, hey, let's build a system that takes all these people that don't know each other. They're all there with the intention of building relationships, and then let's organize the process so that they feel deeply connected to each other within a couple of days. So let's do what would normally take 10 years, let's do in 2 days in terms of connection and trust.
Yeah.
And we figured out how to do it. And the irony is, the first step was so freaking simple that it's almost embarrassing. So it's one of our favorite quotes, and it's the shortest distance between two people is a story. And it was shocking. We'd put a group of executives together at a table. We'd have them share their stories, the hardest thing they've overcome, their favorite outdoor experience. We had a variety. We had like a couple hundred topics what we'd use.
Yeah.
They'd go around, take 2 minutes each, and they would connect as human beings.
Yeah.
And then we would have them connect and talk about their business. And that was the beginning process. And now these people are like best friends. I mean, they know more each other than probably their families know about it. Just because it's all comfortable, and it's all they don't share anything they don't want to share.
Yeah.
It's just the fact that there's a natural environment designed to help them share. And when you start storytelling, it's like, it's amazing. Actually, it's magic. And then we have them talk about their business. But before I understand it, unless I care about you, I don't really care about your business.
Yeah.
If I don't have context for you, context creates caring, but proximity doesn't equal connection. If that were true, you could stick everybody in a 65,000 football stadium.
Yeah.
You're surrounded by tens of thousands of people, but you exit that experience the same way you entered it. But we want it, when we have 100 people in a room, we want them to exit completely transformed and deeply connected at the end. But that takes intention.
It takes intention. It's interesting. I don't know why this story popped in my head, but we're talking about stories, so I can share this one. But years and years ago, gosh, when the first Avengers movie came out, if you remember that, Marvel did like a marathon, like a Marvel marathon. And at the time, there were like 5 or 6 Marvel movies made before the Avengers came out. And so they said, hey, you guys can go in the theater, and we're going to show you all 5 of the movies back to back to back, and then Avengers at the very end. It was like a 15-hour extravaganza, right? It started at 10 a.m. and ended at 2 a.m. or something like that. And they would take a half-hour break between movies. And I remember going in the theater, and there was like this group of us. And I remember, like, sometimes I get overly extroverted, but I said to everybody in the theater, I said, guys, we're all going to be on a journey together. We might as well get to know each other. You're the ones, we all have inner nerds within us. It was amazing to see how people just opened up. Yeah. And they wanted to talk about the stories and everything. And we were kind of, getting to know each other. And I just remember thinking, there is definitely something incredibly powerful with this. And, one of the things that you guys do at TribeHouse, and I actually don't know the difference between Corporate Alliance and TribeHouse.
It's not.
Is it much of a difference?
It's just started the company in 2000, and then we built it, and then there was a bunch of transactions back and forth, and eventually we came back and bought the Corporate Alliance piece back. So it's essentially the biggest difference with TribeHouse is just that we focus on a lot of different verticals. Corporate Alliance focus mostly on business to business. Yeah. We have the Mom Tribe and the CMO, CTO Tribe, and all these different, the Latina Tribe. We've got all these different, because there's all these different groups. Yeah. And I didn't want to think linearly anymore, right? Yeah. I wanted to think exponentially. Like, okay, the whole world is made up of tribes. Yeah. Right? The whole world is, and I want to connect the whole world. And how do we do that as an organization, how do we get our staff and our employees and our members to all engage in this process of like, okay, let's transform the world.
Yeah.
But it's not just business executives that transform the world, right?
It's everyday people.
Moms will do more to transform the world than a business executive ever could imagine doing.
Mm-hmm.
And they need just as much support and connection to their tribe. And so building those connections is vitally important to the world's health and to obviously that individual community's health.
You know, we talk about this, like maybe even from like a scientific point of view, but it's kind of like raising the frequency and the vibration on the earth, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where it's like, I really believe that one of the big things that we could possibly do in the world is to just share more light into it, you know, and like to lift other people up wherever they're at. And I feel like you're doing that. You're already doing that on a very, very massive scale, on a global scale, which is awesome. And it sounds like you keep growing. But one of the things I was going to tell you is like part of the TribeHouse experience is like planned retreats. Mm-hmm. And I think retreats are actually really powerful as well. Because, go ahead. You go.
No, I was just saying there's a whole chapter in the book called Pools, and we identify basically they're like you described, Sharon. They're like they're events, but they have a certain recipe that's required. Because again, proximity doesn't equal connection. Just because you've got 1,000 people in a room doesn't mean those 1,000 people. I mean, go to CES, go to any trade show, and you're gonna be surrounded by thousands of people, but you're gonna feel alone.
Yeah.
And because we call it Cheers effect. Mm-hmm. You're too young to.
No, I'm not too young. I know Cheers. Come on, I know Cheers.
So
not that young.
So obviously, if you are too young to know what Cheers is, a 80s sitcom, but
it is a great sitcom starring Ted Danson and a bunch
90s,
of other people.
I don't know, whatever it was.
80s.
Yeah, 80s. But anyway, it's a bar, and beer is a commodity, and there was probably 4 other bars on that same road. So why did Norm walk in that door? And why did Diane? And why did all those people go in there specifically? It's because that's where everybody knew their name, right? That was their place. They didn't go there for the commodity. They went there for the connection. And I think people that sell commodities need to understand if they want to really truly be successful and enjoy their life and in their experience, instead of trying to connect people to products and services, connect your customers to each other, and then provide a product or service in the middle. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So now it's like, hey, it's all about us connecting our communities with each other. That's what's going to bring the real joy, and then we're going to provide a product or service that's going to amplify the experience. Mm-hmm. I think, and if people started really doing that and ingesting that and realizing that's where the real power is, not only would they build better products, but they would enjoy their life experience, which, like you said, is probably like 40, 50, 60% of it's at work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like we spend most of our time here on Earth in this building, or we're doing this thing. Yeah. Right? And we're gonna what are we gonna wish we had changed? And for me, it's like I think we'll wish that we had more connection. We had that the people around us were more connected to us.
You know, it's interesting because we talk about like having an abundant life, where it's like, oh yeah, you made a lot of money, or you had a lot of success in your business and all kinds of stuff, but sometimes. It's more important to say, how do you experience life more abundantly?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think that having those rich relationships, those friendships, where you can count on each other and like call upon each other and have like deep conversations with each other that like go to like midnight or 1 or 2 in the morning sometimes. Those type of relationships are just so cherished and unfortunately so rare, because people aren't used to like opening up and sharing, and I think it's a powerful thing. But it's cool that you realize that, man, and it's cool that you've built this whole organization around it. So, what is the future of TribeHouse?
Well, like you said, we're like you talked about us being global. We're not yet, but we're still in Utah. But that is the goal.
Utah is a global state.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
We're starting to look at Arizona finally for real. As our next market launch.
Cool.
And then we'll probably do Intermountain West, Boise, Vegas. Vegas might be a tougher town to break into.
Maybe it might be.
But maybe because they're highly connected in different groups, then maybe that works. I don't know. We'll figure it out. But our goal is to have a physical tribe house. Because again, the tribe house is it's not just the TribeHouse is an actual place. You know, it's, you know, we're working on getting the restaurant in. We're working on getting the other components of connection, and we want when people come here that this feels like the new town square. Because back in the day, you know, you watch the old, you know, shows. It was like everybody's gathering to these central places and they're hanging out. Where is that now?
There is not one place.
Nowhere.
No.
Like literally, there is no town square.
Yeah.
There is no central place for connection and community. And I'm like, TribeHouse is committed to creating those epicenters in each community.
I love that.
So those are gathering places where all of those people gather that want to connect and feel connected to their tribes. And again, there might be 100 different types of tribes that they're a part of.
Yeah.
So we connect them to their community, the people that care about the same things, enjoy the same things. I mean, eventually we might get all the way down to, you know, knitting tribes and get more, you know, people that have specific hobbies or, you know, fly fishing, whatever it is. Right now it's more generalized, but you know, eventually at some point we want people to enjoy their life together with people that have similar types of interests.
I love that, man. It's so cool. It's so cool, and I love that you're doing all that stuff. Because we were talking about like the different tribes that are being created right now, and I think there's such a demand for it, because one of the hardest things is to feel like I have a desire in my heart and I feel alone because I can't find people that have the same desire. So to find people that have the similar thing and to be able to share that with them, that's powerful. You know, it's really, really powerful.
Now, they've done some studies and different things. Probably one of the primary things we provide to people is a way to get out of loneliness.
Oh, I love that.
It's so weird that that's kind of the national and international disease right now. And again, which goes back to what we talked about earlier, which is this idea of technology somehow freeing us.
Yeah.
In reality, in a lot of cases, it shackles us.
Yeah.
And imprisons us and distances us from.
Yeah.
I was a child of the 80s, man. I'm like, I know what it means to just hop on my
bike,
my big wheel, and just go wherever I wanted, and my bike. And I lived as part of a community. I was a part. My whole neighborhood was my oyster. I could go anywhere and be a part of that experience. I feel so bad for my kids because they live it.
Yeah.
It's just a smaller experience in terms of community.
Yeah.
And I think we need to figure out how to solve that problem, because it's a problem. It's a real problem. Anxiety and all these the social things that we're dealing with right now. I mean, a lot of that has to do with disconnection. A lot of that has to do with living in this virtual world that's not even real, and this fear now of everyone around you, and isolating ourselves and protecting ourselves, and not being a part of an actual extended family that extends into your neighborhood and into your city and into your state. And I'm like, to me, that's the number one problem I'm trying to solve. Yeah. Is how do we fix how do we bring the 80s back?
How do we bring the 80s back? Dude, I love that. Yeah.
So.
No, you know, it's interesting because, and I've shared this with other guests on different podcasts, but like when I was in India, I was having a conversation with one of my cousins, and I said, listen, man, if you could live anywhere in the world, anywhere at all, where would you live? And without even blinking, he's like, oh, Pondicherry, which is the town that he was living in. Yeah. I'm like, I'm so sorry. Let me rephrase the question. Anywhere. And he's like, no, I choose Pondicherry. And I said, well, why? And his first answer is like, oh, I'm never lonely here. Yeah. It was so simple. And I realized that like everything was a celebration to them. Everything, you know, and family got together and we always celebrated. We always went out and like did fun stuff. And they're like, when I was there, I don't even know if I've met these cousins until I went there, but instantly I was like, hey, come with us, Sharon. We're going to go do this. We're going to go do that. And it was just so fun. It was just like this fun time. And I love that idea. Like, how do we bring the 80s back? Because that is the thing, right? Like, I remember as well as a kid, there would be certain neighborhoods where I like the cul-de-sac. It was like my favorite, right? We'd go to the cul-de-sac, and my friends would all live in a certain cul-de-sac, and we'd all
night games.
We'd play night games. We'd play Nerf, you know, and like we'd play like Street Fighter, like video games. I don't even know, like just the wee hours of the morning, and our parents, they didn't worry. Oh. They didn't worry. They would just, you know, like they would just be like, oh yeah, they're having fun and doing their thing. And
I was a child of the community.
Yeah.
And that requires trust. That requires connection. And I'm sure bad things happen, and I get that we need to protect against some of those things. But I think if we weigh those things against each other, then the net is still negative. Like it's not what it could be.
Yeah.
And so there's got to be, and again, I'm not anti-technology. We build tech here, but I want to figure out how to build community tech that allows people to feel more comfortable with each other, to trust each other more, and create communities again that are safer, but that are also deeply, 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 deeply connected, and way more fun. We don't have nearly enough experiences.
Yeah.
So like we have this beautiful life to live, and we're spending lots of time just typing on an
computer
app.
or something.
Yeah.
You know.
It's just silly.
It is silly. So let me ask you this. It was a question I wanted to ask you earlier. How do you become more trusting yourself? Because that's one number one things I would say in order to have a community like this is to become a more trusting person, to allow people to come in to your life. And
I
feel
love
safe.
all of Brene Brown stuff, and about the power of vulnerability, the power of understanding how the beginning steps of real happiness are the process of letting go and allowing people to see you, the real you. And I think that is the foundational piece, where you have to kind of let go of this facade and kind of get real with people. And once you get real with people, they start to trust you. And once they start to trust you, then you start to trust them. And this is beautiful kind of harmonious cycle that happens as a result of that vulnerability.
Yeah.
And just, you're not trying to pretend that you're perfect anymore. You're not trying to pretend that it's just all the kind of facades drop, and you start really just thinking, okay, I see you, you see me, and I trust you. And not that I think you're perfect, but I understand that I'm starting to get a feel for your heart and who you are as a person. I think that, to me, that's the first step, is just vulnerability, starting to be whole in terms of, because one of the best things that ever happened to me is we've gone through phases in this company where we were viewed as very successful, and times where we were viewed like, hey, you're probably going to fail and it's over for you. And it was those times that were the hardest that I started to realize that real relationships are built on not caring what other people think, which sounds like a really weird paradox.
No, but keep going with this. I like this.
But the fundamental principle of real relationships is not absorbing or what other people are thinking or what you think they're thinking. Meaning that the dialogue that's running in your head,
the narrative
that you've got running, is that I'm trying to maintain, goes away, and you literally become present, and you stop caring if that person thinks you're cool, or stop caring if that person thinks that you meet some kind of checkbox or set of standards that arbitrary standards that are somehow been built in through society or whatever. And you're like, nope, I just see you. I don't care what you think. And this is the hardest part, was like doing that with my wife and my kids, because I'm like, honey, I really don't care what you think anymore. And my wife's like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, no, it's not like that. The only way for me to truly love you and connect with you in a meaningful, real way is to stop the narrative in my head. Because it's damaging all of this, right?
Totally. And that narrative in your head makes it so you become like a people pleaser, which I've been guilty of, and like, oh my gosh, like what's going to happen here? What's going to happen there? And you're like, wait a minute, forget about all that. You just be present with the person. Was there a moment in your life where you were living in facades, and then you're like, I gotta let these go?
I think most of my life. I think most people, and I still do. I mean, I think that's definitely part of who I am still. I still have those narratives running in my head. What I've gained is the skill to, because I think most people, we're really, 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 really sophisticated computers with souls. So in my opinion, so we have this beautiful, amazing human tech that we use, our bodies, and we've got these spirits that kind of drive it, but we've got all that DNA, all that encoded stuff that's been generational for years and years and years. I struggled with OCD and all kinds of other like major issues that are hereditary, and I'm not saying they're not real; they're 100% real. But there's a certain, Napoleon Hill talks a little bit about this, but there's a certain amount of like 3% of the population that's actually awake. And the rest are in hypnotic rhythm, like he calls it. They're meaning that they're just operating on the program.
They're kind of like zombies.
I don't want to be critical. I was a zombie because I remember being a zombie, and I remember like, oh, I'm operating at 97% of the. You're just, the way you're in that cycle is that you just are in a cycle. Like you're in a little river, and there's this little whirlpool, and you're like, hey, that scenery looks familiar.
Yeah.
I've been here before, and
Yeah.
then you're there again, and then you're there again. But you have the illusion of progress.
Yeah.
But in reality, you're just experiencing the same things a little bit differently.
Mm.
And then at some point, you can wake up, and I hope
Yeah.
that 97% turns into, like, that 3% turns into 97%, and
Sure.
everybody starts to wake up.
Yeah.
Because I think when you wake up, you realize, sure, I have DNA, sure, I have all these challenges, but I can also start to reprogram.
Yeah.
Like just like Java or any kind of programming language.
Sure.
We have a human programming language, and our brains have the ability to recode and reassess,
Mm-hmm.
and then reprogram literally.
Yeah.
But we have to assert control over that, and then we have to start practicing, and then we have to see actual transformations in our life. We have things.
Yeah.
We're no longer in the same patterns that are obvious, and we're breaking through to new places where we've never been before. And then you realize, oh, I'm awake.
Yeah.
I'm alive because I have the ability to start creating my future, as opposed to just living my code.
I love that, man. Dude, so many freaking things to unpack there. I don't even know if we have time for everything, but like the thing that I've always felt is like what human beings want more than ever is to feel alive, is to really feel alive. And what human beings don't get more than ever is that feeling of being alive,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Because they're living in that narrative. They're living in that code, that pre-programmed thing that like determines the lens in which they view life.
Mm-hmm.
I remember I was in Target one day, like it was over Christmas time, and I started like looking into just kind of in the eyes of people, and they just looked so dead, you know, and they look so sad, and they're just kind of going through the motions because that's what they're supposed to do. And I'm like, wait a minute, this doesn't seem right. This seems like, you know, we're supposed to be a lot more awake and alive and full of joy and, you know, and full of awe. And it's interesting because I look at my my little nephew. He's not quite 2 yet. And when he looks at the world, everything is just full of awe. He's just so blown away by a rock.
Yeah.
You know, and he picks it up and he's like looking at it. And I'm like, wow, there was a time when I was blown away by a rock. Now I just kind of like, oh yeah, it's a rock. You know, I just take it for granted. But how do you get back into that state of complete awe? What do you think for yourself?
Well, I think the first step to that is asking that question. How do I get back to that stage? Because when we ask our bodies, our brains, the universe, however you view the world, when we ask questions, we get answers. And when you get used to getting answers by asking questions, you have to look for them and they come to you. But it's like, hey, how do I get back? Because I've asked that specific question lots of times. How do I get back to, because I had a really blissful childhood. I know what it feels like to live in awe. I know what it feels like to have those feelings be consistent as a part of my experience. I'm glad I do, because otherwise I might not think it's a fairy tale, and I might not. I might think it's impossible. Yeah. But becoming a child again is a real question, and I think it's maybe the most important question a human being will ever ask. Because you can't unpack all of your knowledge and wisdom. That's probably not a good idea. You want to combine the two, right?
You want to combine the two. Right.
How do I bring all that I've learned, all of this creative power and energy, and how do I bring back that child that can kind of lead me back to happiness? Because I want to be happy, really.
Of course.
At the end of the day, I just want to be happy. But so I've asked myself lots of times, is there a path back to that person that I used to be? Yeah. And the answer is yes. But it requires another 30, 40 questions. So and that's what I've learned is that, like, hey, it's questions, and then you're going to get to a level of, anyway, there's a whole thing in our process that we talk about. A lot of it's calm. We talk about bringing your ships in, and you've got to get really clear on what you want. You've got to start to look at the cues in your life, like visual and auditory cues. You say, this is what I'm building, this is what I'm creating. And then you've got to get calm, and people don't know how to be calm anymore. No, they do not. It's really calm and beautiful states, and then you've got to understand the clues start to appear. And once those clues start to appear, you need to unlock all of those clues. So it's like a series of breadcrumbs. Like I'm following it to the next thing, and I'm following it to the next thing, and following it to the next thing. Because you have to learn in stages. Yeah. You can't, you have to say, hey, no, I want this bad enough that I'm going to go through this whole process. Yeah. So when those clues arrive, and they can come in the form of, people, They can come in the form of products. They can come in the form of paradigm shifts.
Yeah.
Right. And so now I had this paradigm shift. I'm like, oh, I never even thought about that before.
Yeah.
But then you've got to chase that.
Yeah.
You and I, before we talked about 3 or 4 paradigm shifts, right?
Yeah,
and
completely.
I'm chasing those right now, and then you and I are talking about some of those cool things that
Yeah.
we're chasing, and that becomes those clues, and following those clues eventually lead to claiming the prize at the end of that, and then we have to celebrate the arrival of those things. So there's this whole beautiful process, and the only reason I figured that process out is because I started asking questions, and I started to document the process.
I love that.
So
yeah.
I think at the end of the day, like, the answer is yes, absolutely, we can become children again, and we need to if we really want to be happy.
Yeah.
And societally, we need to figure out how to do that as a group.
Yeah.
And part of that, again, is what we do here at TribeHouse, which is
Yeah.
connection, seeing people.
I think like it's interesting because, even in the Bible, Jesus says, "Become like a little child," and I think that's such a powerful statement. What does that mean? What does that look like? And that's the path that you have to take on yourself, your individual journey. Well, we are running out of time. We've been having a wonderful, wonderful chat. So I have 2 more questions I want to ask you, and we can wrap things up. So, what right now would you say is your greatest fear? What's holding you back?
Fear's been a huge part of my life, and so I spent a lot of time asking questions related to fear. Not nearly as many things as I used to.
Great.
So I think allowing myself to believe in things way bigger than they currently are. And there's a specific principle I'm trying to really believe and ingest 100%, and it is this idea of compounded happiness. So, because I started to realize a lot of my fears were kind of revolving around societal norms that I've been taught.
Yeah.
So I'd watch a movie, and they're like, the main character's like, my life is perfect. I can't believe how happy I am. They're in a car, right? And one of 2 things is going to happen. A semi is going to hit them straight head on, or
Yeah.
they're gonna call, and somebody's going to ring, and like, what's going on, right?
Yeah.
And we call it the other shoe dropping, right? 2 steps forward, one step back.
Yeah.
Right. So it's these constant narratives that we run in this world that say that happiness is only the forerunner of pain. And if you're going to be happy, all you're doing is setting yourself up for pain. And if you start to believe that consistently, you're going to stop chasing happiness. Right?
Yeah.
Because
the fear of pain will be there.
Yeah, the fear of success. So you're going to undermine your own success at work. You're going to undermine your success in your family. You're going to undermine it with your friends, because if you experience too much happiness and then go in the direction of those things, I've been taught literally that's going to be taken away. So I'm trying to get myself and my psyche to believe in compounded happiness, which is every day is going to be better than the day I just lived. Every day.
Yeah.
Every day is going to get better and better and better and better. And so, and I still don't, even when I say it now, I'm still like, do I believe that yet?
Have I owned it yet? Yeah.
But that's a choice, right? And believing in compounded happiness as opposed to the other shoe dropping.
Yeah.
This is a really powerful belief that can accelerate and push me to new levels of happiness. This one is, by my own experience for decades, is hell.
Yeah.
Like, this is literally you not wanting to connect with your kids because your kids might die, right? This is, with an OCD person, like, these are natural cycles inside of their brain.
Yeah.
And so you're like, oh, I don't want to get too close to this person because that might cause me pain, or I've been hurt in the past by this type of person, and so I'm going to disconnect from relationships in general, and I'm not going to feel or experience things anymore.
Yeah.
Or I'm not going to accelerate at work because people that are successful at work get rich, and rich people are terrible, and I don't want to be judged as a terrible person because I have wealth. So we have all of these mixed signals.
Yeah.
And so,
Wow.
and it's all fear-based. And so you have to get to the point where you're like, hey, first of all, that first thing, I don't care what anybody thinks.
Yeah.
Because that's the first step. If you care what everybody thinks and you're living everyone else's narrative,
Yep.
fear will inevitably come in and just destroy you.
Yeah.
Yeah. But if you can get to that level, you're like, okay, I'm past worrying about what people think.
Yeah.
Now I'm trying to work on, hey, I want to have new beliefs.
Yeah.
Because all those beliefs are wired in my subconscious. Like, it's not like I'm even thinking about it. I'm self-sabotaging, which I have been for years in a lot of different ways, just naturally, because that's my belief in there.
Yeah.
And those beliefs create dissonance, cognitive dissonance, and that's how you know you got a bad belief in there, is you've got this
unstable,
unsteady.
ship.
You feel
Yeah.
it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So whenever you feel that, then you have a belief that you probably need to go look at, and then you need to replace it. That's when I'm talking about coding.
Yeah.
We need to change our belief around that thing, because as long as we hold that belief, it doesn't matter what circumstances you bring
Sure.
into life, right?
Yeah.
It's still going to be an issue. So I don't know if that answered your question.
No,
but-
well, here's the thing. It's interesting because even as you're talking to me, I'm like, man, this is just therapy for me. Because it's like I look at my own life and I think, are there beliefs that I'm holding on to that are not serving me? And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. And you ask, you got to go beyond the place of what other people think of me.
Yeah.
Am I there yet? Not 100%. I feel like that's gonna be a lifelong journey.
Oh, yeah.
I think
It's
there's
my
a lot.
dream, though.
Yeah, it's a great dream, right? Isn't it a great dream? A buddy of mine introduced this to my vocabulary, FOPO. You know what FOPO is? Well, FOMO
Yeah, I know
is
FOMO is fear of missing out.
Fear of missing out. FOPO is fearing other people's opinions,
Oh, I love that.
and I love that too.
Yeah.
You know, and a lot of people have FOPO.
FOPO.
You know.
I'm using that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
use it, dude. Use it.
Okay.
But yeah, I think like it is true. Like so much of my life growing up as just was like fearing what my parents thought of me, or fearing what this happened, or fearing what that happened, and so much of my life was like battling that. So initially, becoming an actor was definitely like going against everything that they ever
Sure.
thought. Because they were like, Sharon, you need to be a doctor. You need to do all these type of things. And now I'm like, well, I've played a doctor on TV. You're welcome. You are welcome. So that's kind of my justification. But it's very interesting. But man, it's absolute freedom, And I've talked to people, and I've seen people that like, you can tell like, wow, they truly live life without fearing what other people think.
Yeah. Well, and the truth is the only thing that can set you free.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you realize, like, oh, what's the truth here?
Yeah.
And you realize, oh, what's the truth about me? Am I really defined by other people's opinions? Am I really, is that really the focus and the focal point of everything that I am? Am I being defined by all these people that, even if I love, the worst people are the ones you love. Not the worst, obviously you love
I know
them,
what you mean. Yeah.
But they're the ones that have the most power over your happiness if you allow them that power. And they've never asked for that power. They don't want that power.
Yeah.
And I'm a worse dad, I'm a worse husband, I'm a worse boss, I'm a worse coworker in every case when I'm trying to run their narratives in my brain. Because I don't have any room for them. Right?
Yeah, you got too many. You all you've created is narratives that are controlling you.
You've been around people that are like this, and
Every day.
on either side, like they're running massive narratives, and the ones that actually are clear and with you and present. And I'm like, oh, it's just so beautiful being with somebody that doesn't care what I think.
Yeah.
Like they're not invested in that. They're invested in me. They see me.
Yeah.
And I don't think you can run those two programs at the same time.
It's exhausting.
You can try, but it's just like you want to run the program where you're like, hey, I'm present, I'm with you. I'm not trying to impress you. I'm not trying to tell you that you think that I'm a great person, or I'm not trying to.
You're not afraid of being judged around them.
That's exactly right.
Yep. You're not afraid of being judged. That you know that when you're with them, there's real love there.
Yeah. Unconditional.
Unconditional love, and it's a beautiful feeling. And
yeah, it's rare though.
It's very, very
sometimes
rare.
people feel it and they're like,
yeah.
But what's cool is like that'll happen consistently in our events. People are just like, they're just sharing, and they get lost in each other's stories, and they're like, oh, I just really care about that person. I want to help them be successful.
Yeah.
And it's because they saw a glimpse of who they actually are for a second. They turned off the programming for just long enough that they connected. And they're like, oh yeah, this is what this feels like, and I want more of this. So the best relationships, the best people, in my opinion, are the ones that have that unique ability, and they've worked on it. This isn't something. Some people are born with it, I guess. It was not natural for me. I was running those narratives like crazy, constantly, all day long, and it was exhausting, and it didn't serve me. It made me miserable. When I turned that off and I said, look, I love all of you, but I don't care what any of you think.
Yeah.
literally and meant it, not like it was just, because you can say that, that's nice to say, but you can, when you actually mean it, it's interesting how those, like even in this dialogue, there's been probably 10 times, this is a little while ago, where it kicked in, the narrative piece.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, oh, what am I going to say to Sharon here? Like, and they're always the least honest and real and raw moments. Because there's this program running in the back where I'm trying to convince you of something, or I'm trying to say something or sound a certain way, or do it in a way that's impressive, or that, I'm looking over here at the camera. I'm like, do I look like an idiot?
Yeah.
Like, is my wife going to judge? When she always says my hair's a little sideways. I'm like, are those the emotional? When I get in those places, I get sideways, right?
Yeah.
And we're not connecting about real stuff. I can feel it.
No.
We lose the realness of those conversations when I go inward and start focusing on what I need or what you're perceiving me to be.
Well, in acting, one of the biggest things we talk about is being present with your partner.
Yeah.
Because one of the biggest things the beginning actors do, and I'm totally guilty of it, and I've been doing it for a long time as well, is thinking about your lines.
Oh, yeah.
Because you have the script. You have to memorize your lines,
I could never do it.
So, Jared, come on. That's a narrative. You just shared a narrative that needs to be scrubbed away.
I don't memorize very well, but okay, yes, I can work on it.
All right, well, that's going to be the next podcast, is you acting. No, but I remember thinking when you're completely off book, meaning like your lines, you don't even have to think about them. There's like breathing.
It's intuitive.
It's so intuitive. You can just be completely present, and you're like saying the lines as if it's just very fresh. But when they're not there, then instead of being with the partner, you're in your head thinking about lines, and it's a very, very difficult thing. So I love acting for that reason, because it's practice for life. And that's what I love. So I want to have one last question to wrap everything up. What is the most important piece of advice you could give your younger self?
It might sound weird, but I don't think I'd give him any advice.
I love it.
Because I would worry that he wouldn't, because I value my failures as much as my successes. And they were better teachers and more powerful teachers, and I'd worry that I might give him too much information that would not have him make those mistakes. And if anything, I would just say, look, I love you.
Yeah.
And I would probably just give him a hug.
Yeah.
And just say, you got this.
You got this.
Yeah. Because and just keep going. Because to me, that's the most important thing I've learned over the last 20 years. Because honestly, the last 20 years have been hell. It's been, and back to the business side. The data says that it's anywhere from like 60 to 95% of businesses fail in the first 5 years. I don't know where the data gets all over. I've looked everywhere, but I used to say 95% of businesses fail in the first, or anyway, within 10 years. So most businesses fail. Let's just put it that way. And I no longer believe that. That's BS. People give up. There's a difference between failing and quitting.
No.
And there was a bunch of businesses that I ran at the beginning that I'm glad that I quit, because I didn't love them enough to sacrifice for them.
Yeah.
This company, because of its mission, I was willing to experience ridiculous amounts of risk and pain to keep it going. And there's been so many people, so many investors, and so many partners, and so many members that have made this all possible. Like, I am literally the definition of a non-self-made man. I am a community of people that have been able to do this together. I couldn't have done. I mean, it's ridiculous what we've been able to do. But the fact that we're still here, especially after COVID. I mean, if there was a company that had the COVID's crosshairs, like just.
Yeah,
we had the red dots all over us.
All over TribeHouse. TribeHouse was not going to be a tribe anymore.
We had 60 people with their guns.
Yeah.
But But they all came together and saved us. It's just it's this beautiful symphony of relationships, and it's all real and beautiful. And I'm like, I just feel so blessed to be a part of their experience.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would just, I would put, like, back to that original idea at the beginning of the company. It was about connection.
Yeah.
It was, because this used to say life is about, business is about relationships. It's just recently we changed it to that life is about relationships. And that the reason we're here is to understand our connection to each other.
Yeah.
And start to lever that into a happier, more meaningful, more beautiful existence. And so, yeah, I want to do this for the rest of my life. I do. I want to be a part of. I want to be a part of building tribes and connecting people for forever. But again, it was worth the sacrifice. And so, if it's not worth the sacrifice, if you are an entrepreneur and you're starting a business and you're like getting a little ways in and you're like, I really, not only do I hate the work, but I hate the mission.
Yeah.
Or not only that, I hate the mission, but it just doesn't seem worthy of me.
Yeah.
It doesn't. I don't wake up
Elated.
elated and lit up, because you're going to have to go face the
world, yeah.
right? And in my case, it was 22 years of beatdown. And so, like, are you ready to sacrifice? Because again, there's a difference between failure and quitting, and most founders quit because it gets too hard. It's not like they couldn't have found a way. I don't believe that they couldn't have found some way to keep going.
Yeah.
Because we found a way thousands of different times, but only because the mission mattered more than my personal pain. And so, anyway, that's the.
I love that, man.
Yeah.
No. Here's the thing. I absolutely love that to be it's a great piece of advice, because I've met people that have done that and I've been guilty of it, where you're going down a path, you're doing a project, and deep down inside you're like, I know I'm not excited about this project, but I'm gonna keep going. I'm gonna keep pushing and working hard. And I remember like having like this this prayerful ask with God. I'm just like, why isn't this project succeeding? And I remember him asking me, well, do you want it to succeed? Like, do you really want it to succeed? Do you really want it to go? And I'm like, oh,
Never thought about that.
I don't know if I have, And he's like, he's like, I can help you, but it doesn't even, like, if you ask yourself, you can tell that this isn't really where your heart truly is at. And I realized that was the case, but I kept trying to convince my heart to be there.
Sure.
Well,
and there's still lessons to be learned doing things that you don't love at that level, as long as you're graduating.
Yeah,
just make sure you're graduating to things that are more meaningful, and don't ever get caught back in that cycle of being unalive, right? So, and if you find yourself looking and you're seeing the same experiences and being frustrated with the same parts of your life, and that means you're probably in hypnotic rhythm, like Napoleon Hill might say, and just be aware of that and realize that you're falling back into a pattern that if you don't break out of that, it takes some energy to get out of a current like that, right?
Yeah.
So you got to exercise some energy to get back out into the actual current where you're making progress and going down the river, and not, or just in this little whirlpool to the side of the river, and you're just like having the illusion of progress. You want to have actual progress. Yeah. And the only way to measure that is that you start to feel more and more alive. And you start to see things differently, and you keep breaking through those patterns, because it doesn't mean you might have one and then get into another and then get into another. You just have to start recognizing the pattern. And if you're not growing and you're not progressing and you're not becoming, like you said, more full of light, more alive, and more powerful, frankly, and more aligned with whatever your mission is, then you need to recognize that, break free from that pattern, and jump into the next experience.
Oh, man. Jared, I'm telling you, it's freaking powerful stuff, man. This is insane. No, I love it. And I think, like, you've unlocked the key to coming alive. And anyone that listens to this podcast, I implore you guys to do that, to come alive and to let go of the things that don't serve you. Recognize if you're seeing the same things over and over and over again. For me, it's probably dating. It's like I am in a hypnotic rhythm like no one's ever seen with that. But it's great, because now it teaches me, great, I got to figure out the things to come alive in that area of life. But thanks, man. I really appreciate you taking the time.
It's my pleasure.
Yeah, it's been so awesome.
I really, really enjoyed it. So thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, of course. And we'll chat soon. Thanks so much for listening to the Lemonade Stand podcast, and we hope you enjoyed this episode. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast on whatever platform you use to be alerted when we release new episodes. We'd also love to hear your feedback in the reviews, and if you or someone you know has an awesome Lemonade Stand story, please reach out to us on social media and let us know.